Welcome back to another video right here on the Free Will Photos channel and inside of the Creative Color miniseries. Today, what we're going to do is take a look at the split toning filter inside of ON1 and use that to get some creative looks. Now, this is by far my favorite filter when it comes to modulating color in a very unnatural way, but very artistic and pleasing way at the same time. The most used is obviously the color adjustment and color enhancer. But today I'm going to show you 3 separate photos. Now, this is a long video and I do recommend that you use the chapter sections to jump to the portions that you are most interested in. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. If you enjoy the video, smash the like button, and if you're new here, consider subscribing. My name's Chris, and I am the content creator here at Free Will Photos. So, enjoy the video. All right, so here is the raw or the base image that we are going to make edits to. Now, I really enjoy this one. I chose this photo very specifically because the tones inside of it are really just, I mean, there's really only one color, maybe 2, but you have this blue and then it goes a little bit darker as it starts to fade here. And then you got white and then it goes into like these gray blue tones. And then there's like this yellow like tone here. And then the background is really just, it goes from black to the blue gray to more of the lighter blue to white. So really, there's only like 3 colors in this particular image. So the very first thing is you're going to click on Effect, Add Filter, and you guessed it, Split Tone. I'm not going to overcomplicate this. What I want to do is make a duotone split with this particular image. So what I'm going to do is click on the icon here next to the highlights, the color swatch thing, and I want my colors to be vibrant and bright. So I'm just going to move this brightness slider up to pretty close to the top of it. Now, I'm going to choose different colors this time, just so I can show you, you can do this with any color that you so please. And I think I'm going to go more of a red tone this time. All right. So I think that is about where I want it. And I'm going to close that out. Now, I'm going to go ahead and increase the amount so I get a good bit in here. And then I'm going to play with the balance just to see where I want this to go. And, you know, this by itself is actually a really cool look for this image. But that's not the end result that I want. So I think I'm going to pull it more to the right. And next thing that I did to make sure that I'm getting the color really only in the highlights, right? Because that's all I'm really affecting here, is I'm going to go to the blending options of split tone, and where it says apply to, I'm going to click on highlights. So now I'm only applying this entire adjustment to my highlights, all right? And this really just gives me more freedom to do what I want. Now I can play around with the range here if I want just a little bit of highlights, or if I want it to be in more of the highlights of the image, which I do. And you see it's really preserving a lot of those blues. And just in case I think it's starting to creep into the shadows, what I do is I pull up on my shadow slider. Doesn't look like it was, but just in case, I pulled it up anyway. And now I have this color only on the brightest portions of my image, which is essentially what I wanted. All right. Now, what I need to do is hit the mask icon, come over here to my masking bug, and I'm going to use linear left, which means that the left side is not going to get the effect, but the right side will. And that's essentially what I wanted. So you can play around with this however you want, but I'm going to leave it at that for now. I'll come back and mess around with it. Now we're going to add a second split tone, and I'm going to speed through this one just a little bit because I think you guys get the idea. Now I'm going to start off by adding this to just my highlights, protecting the shadows, and then I'm going to come over, wrong button, and I will add another masking bug. This one is going to be linear right, and I'm going to click in the middle, so that way I'm only adding my effect to the left side of my image. Now let's select a color wheel. I want this to be a bright color, and let's see what looks good. So this is where you kind of just hunt around on the color wheel, and while I do that, I should bring up the amount so I can actually see it. Okay, come back over here, and I'm just looking for colors that complement the color that's on the right hand side. No, that doesn't look too well. Maybe a pink. Yeah, pink doesn't look too bad. And maybe I'll crank that up, give it a little bit more. And I don't like the way that it looks, just in this area right here. So what I'm gonna do is come back to my blending options, and I want to protect my highlights a little bit. I know that I'm only applying this to my highlights, and I'll increase the range, but I do want to protect the highlights because I don't want like this really weird purple tinge looking thing. All right, so now I have my overall look, right? My two-tone look, and you could actually stop right here if this is what you're into. I think that this looks great. However, what I want to do next is add in a little bit of a flare on either side of this little ice ball. And I am going to click on my masking bug or my gradient tool. I'm going to hit vignette, click edges, and click in the middle here. And I'm going to get this red looking color, right? Now, you won't have this problem if you did not tag your colors just in the highlights, all right? But because I did, I'm still keeping the original tones. And I'm not disappointed about that decision. I'm going to show you how you can still get the same effect, or at least a very similar one. So we're going to click here, and all I'm going to do is move this around until it starts to match, which takes some time. And, maybe that'll work. It's not the same color, I'll be honest. But that is part of, me messing around with doing some stuff here. And then we'll come up to the opacity. And now that I'm actually on the classic version of painting with color, you can do some things like adjusting the exposure behind the area that you are affecting. Maybe even mess around with some contrast issues. Nope. But what I would really do is just click here and bring down the opacity until it got into a range where I was comfortable. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I will copy this mask because that's about the same size as I want for the second one. Come over here, click on that, paste it, and then I'm just going to drag this on over, rotate it around, and I'll leave it about there. So now all I have to do is reset this paint with color, and I get to choose the color in which I want. And I think I'll go with something maybe the same color or something similar. There we go. We'll go like that. And then just bring down the opacity to blend it in and make it more of a background look, right? I can make this feather a lot larger so it'll spread further into the image, and do the same thing here. And then maybe just reposition this a little bit. And now there's this colorful background, as well as, you know, this colorful sphere in front. And you can make that change however you want. Now, the last thing that I did to the other image was I added in some fog. So I'm going to click Add Filter, click on Weather. And then on the fog slider here, I'm just going to drag that up. All right, now it's only on the top half. I actually wanted the fog to be down on the bottom half. So all you got to do is click the drop down and find bottom half slow. You could do bottom half fast, whatever works for you. You know, this is bottom third fast. Bottom half is what I really wanted. And then all I did was I played around with the amount until I got a look that I was pleased with, which this is it. Now, again, this is the before photo, which looks great on its own. And this is the after photo, just to give it a little bit more spice and energy. Here is the second photo that we're going to edit, all using the split tone. Now, I'm not going to do anything with the develop module. Just going to go ahead and click on effects, add filter, and then we're going to click on split tone. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer just like so. And I'm going to rename this as subject, and I'm going to name this one background. All right. And the reason is I'm going to do a lot of the effects here, but I want to have the same effect applied up here. Now, the reason why you want to cut out your subject, and I guess you could probably do it afterwards too. That's going to be the easier method, but I'll go ahead and cut out the subject nonetheless on this one using the AI quick select. And now we are going to get into the actual effect here. And the very first thing that I'm going to do is turn on this split tone effect. And I want to really just focus on the background. How do I want to affect the background? Using the same model that I used before, is I'm going to hit the highlight option, and I'm going to brighten this bad boy up. And then pull this over. You know, I think I'm going to go more into this area, and we'll bring up the amount pretty good. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I actually like that a lot. And I'll play around with my balance just to see how I want the blues to affect. And I'm really only looking at the background. I am looking at her skin because one of the things that you can do if you're concerned that the skin is going to get too much of the color is you can just pull back on the skin slider. Now, the problem with this image is her skin tones are very close to the background color. So that's not going to be an option for me, which is why I had to do the cutout up here, because then I can have her on a separate layer and really make those adjustments as necessary. I think this is going to work out just fine. This time, I'm not going to put a layer mask or a mask over this one. Instead, what I'm going to do is hit Add Filter, hit Split Tone again. This time, I am going to click on the highlights again, and let's go for a darker blue. Okay, and then we'll increase the amount here so that way it's a really, really dark blue, and we're going to get a good transition once we mask this one. So let's go ahead and click on the mask, get our masking bug, and we're going to do linear left, click, and I want to turn this because I think that would be cool. And then click, drag, move this out, and figure out where I want this fade to start really transitioning into that other blue color, right? Now, this is a cool effect. You could leave it just like this if that's what you wanted to do. Now, as I mentioned before, the problem that I really have with this is it is too much over her. And it's affecting the skin. Now, there are a few different options that you can use to fine tune what you're doing. All right. The first option, and I'd only recommend this if you are only using these two filters. All right. If you're using other filters, maybe you're going to need to make multiple layers, and this could work then. But what you'll do is you'll hit the layer mask for your filters. So once you have minimized all your filters, or you find the add filter button, come over to the left and you're going to see a little layer mask icon, or a show hide mask icon. When you click that, obviously you get a layer mask just like you do with everything else. This one does not give you as many features as you get in the other ones. However, what you can do here is make your brush pretty large, or however large you want it to be. And I do recommend you work with a lower opacity, like less than 20. All right. That's just my preference. You do whatever works for you. And then I'm just going to feather this quite a bit because I don't want to see the transition all that much. And all I'm going to do, and I guess I can make it a little bit smaller. All I'm going to do is start brushing away some of this color from her skin. And I did go over the dress on one of those passes. Didn't really mean to. But using a low opacity really does help with this. All right. And then you'll see how I'm going to, oh, I'm on paint in. My goodness, I was wondering why nothing was working. All right, now I'm on paint out. And now, yes, there we go. And I start having my perfect brush on. Check your settings, guys. Check your settings. All right. Don't need perfect brush on. And the goal here is to retain some of the, and I'm just going to reset this because I had the perfect brush on and I was starting to get these uneven patches of painting. And it doesn't have to be the most perfect paint job that you have ever done in your life. But her skin tone, I really appreciate, right? So turning it blue is not a good look. Now, obviously, if there was a gel on the lights, and that's essentially what we're simulating here, if there was a gel on the lights, yes, her skin tone is going to capture some of those blues, but what's the point in editing in post if you don't manipulate the way that you want it to look? You can get the exact look that you want. So might as well do it, right? And I'm not worried about the color going in her hair, but I don't want it so much on her skin. That's all. And you can make some areas even by using a lower opacity. You can kind of get this dodge and burn effect by repassing on some of the areas after you have already lifted up and clicked. Now, that does take some getting used to because it's easy when you're doing one click, which I usually recommend against, but in this situation that rule can be broken. And I am using a mouse, just moving as detailed or as skillfully as I can down her arm here. And now we'll come back and get this side of the arm. We'll come in here and get this area. And then we'll come over here. And again, this is not the best paint job. I'm just showing you how to do this really, really quickly, even though it is taking a little bit of time. You know, I don't want to show you a bad product. It's not going to be the greatest, but not going to be the worst either. And all I'm doing there, you can probably hear me clicking, increasing my brush size. And I think that's a little too much, or I'm sorry, not enough removed. So I'm just going to come over here, and you see how I'm like lightly, there's a transition slightly between this side where the light is really bright to this side where it gets a little bit darker. And you can even do the same with the arm here. So if I wanted to paint in more color over here just to simulate that this part, that did not work out the way that I expected it to. So we're not going to do that. But now you can see that I have a very, very faint mask. All right. And if we want to see that, this is how faint it is. It's very, very faint. All right. All it's doing is masking away a little bit of this adjustment down here. Now, the way that you can also do this, copy, I'm going to come over here to a local adjustment. This is just a way that I save mask. So if I ever want to go back, because I'm about to reset this. So if I ever want to go back to that mask, obviously I still have it on my clipboard. So you can see the before and after when I copy and paste this back in. So that's one way. Now, the way that I would recommend doing it, and you know, again, this is just a personal preference, is I would make a duplicate of this particular layer after I've made all of my edits. And then we'll call this cutout adjustment. Don't know why I capitalized the U on there, but that's all right. And then I'm going to come over here and we'll make this layer active just so I can copy the mask. Now, as you can see, I cut her out. Now, if you are looking just to make backgrounds, this is a perfect example of how you can make a background and then come over here, do whatever it is that you got to do. It just works out great, right? You can do that. And there's nothing wrong with this. But what I wanted to do is come over here to the cutout for the adjustment. Click on the layer mask there. And we're going to go ahead and paste that layer mask on. And we'll go ahead and close that out. So nothing has changed yet because I haven't made any adjustments to my split toning. Now, the reason why I recommend this method over the other is because I can just come in here and I can pull down the opacity of one adjustment over the other, or I can go into each of these. And again, I'm all about having a variety of options. All right. That's just my personal preference. I like to have options when I'm editing. I can go into the blending options of my split tone and I can click and drag to remove from the skin. So this one is removing that darker blue that's over here on the right. And then if I came into this one, I can also come over to the skin tones and I can remove that blue, and you can see that's making a huge shift, right? So what I'm getting here is a nice even adjustment over her entire body, all right? And that may be just the right amount of the original lighting and the additional lighting that I just added in. You know, you can turn it off and on by inverting this mask. So this is without any adjustment, just the picture of her on her own. And this is her with the adjustments. Now I can come over here and obviously really fine tune this even more. I can bring the skin level down and just play with the opacity of this particular look. So maybe I only want a little bit. All right. And again, that's that darker blue. And then I can bring down the opacity of this one, and she starts to shine through even more. There's a lot of creative things that you can do here. Okay, so this is a more traditional method of using the split tone option. Now I'm going to turn it off so you can see the original photo. It's very bright. There's not too much color. I mean, there's color in it. There's the blue sky, and then there's like this brown, light brown, gray almost even. And then it goes into these oranges, this light orange, and you can see the colors, right? So there are colors, but there's really not a whole lot of them. If you want to increase a particular color, my very, very favorite way of using the split tone is, instead of just turning on the split tone and saying, okay, I want to increase that color and add it in the entire image, what I would really recommend is you actually do a color range. So you can click on it, grab the eye picker tool, and click on the color range that you want to manipulate. Now, this is going to give you some options. Now, I recommend you hit O so you can see what it's actually selecting. As you can see, I got the sky in there. I don't want the sky in my split tone that I'm about to mess around with. All right. So I'm going to pull my range down until it really only gets into the areas that I want, which is about there. All right. I'm okay if the little caverns don't get the split tone adjustment. This is going to be more of a subtle effect. All right. Now, there's other ways of messing with the mask, and I'm not going to get into that in this particular video. We'll go ahead and hit O. Now, if I want to mess with the colors of the highlights just in this range, I can make them whatever color I want them to be. All right. Whatever color I want them to be. Doesn't even matter. I can do it. All right. Now, this is really, really cool if you are just trying to say, okay, you know what? They're orange, but I want them to be just a little bit more red. So, you know, we'll go from orange to more of a red color. We're going to get like a Marsy kind of look here, right? Maybe something like that. And maybe that's just too bright. So let's darken it. Okay, that looks good. So that's in our highlights. Well, what about in our shadows? We need to do about the same thing in our shadows. And I want shadows, well, they're supposed to be darker. So we're just going to bring that down, and we're going to choose a darker color to really make these things pop. And now you just mess around with the amount of each of those colors. So if I put in a lot of that shadow color, it's going to make it a little bit more rich. And if I put in a lot of this brighter color, it's going to make it a little bit more vibrant or saturated. So I'm just going to mess around with the balance here until I get something that I think I just might like. And maybe make it a little bit more rich. Bring down the highlight tone. Make it more of a shadow fill, maybe? No. All right. So let's say that this is where I want it to be. Now, I've already got my color range. I got that working out just the way that I want it. I'm going to go ahead and hit the gear icon. And this is where I think the split toning feature really can help out. I want to preserve some of the highlights that were already in the image. So all I have to do is pull over to the right, and it starts to preserve some of those highlights. You see how the white is starting to shine back through? That's important to me, at least, being able to have that control. And then I can pull the shadows up as well and get some of those darker blacks in there, but maybe that just isn't enough. All right. And this is where adding in a tone enhancer can help out. So I'm going to add that in, and you're going to see the image change drastically because I've already started messing with this, but I'm going to reset it. All right. Ultimately, what I think I want is for, let's see how it looks when I make everything dark. Okay. And mind you, this is manipulating the color. This is going to be more of the brightness of the overall color in the image. But the cool thing is I have this masking option. All right. And if I go ahead and hit paste, you're going to see that it should paste in the outline of our model that was in the other image, but that's not what we want. All right. I just thought that would be fun, but you can do that, and that could be creative. But what we're going to do is actually just copy this particular mask that we've already made, selecting our image with the color range, and we're going to hit paste, and boom. Now I am only affecting the bottom half of my image, and you don't want to go too far in either direction when you're doing this, but maybe I want more blacks in this area to really help with the contrast a tad bit, and then maybe increase the white to really separate that, or just boost the contrast overall. I don't know. This is very subjective, but maybe that's where I want it to be. And then I can always change the opacity of how much of this effect I add into my image. So I think right about there is good. Turn it off and on, off, or on, and then off. It's just a nice little color shift, or not color shift, but a luminance shift. And now I'm going to add another filter. I'm going to add a tone enhancer again, not textures. I added textures by accident. You could add a texture filter, but that's not what I wanted to do. Click on tone enhancer, and now I'm going to pull this right above there, and I'm going to paste my mask again. This time I'm going to invert it, hit O, because the same keyboard key of the right and left bracket, if you hold down Command, it will rotate your image. Don't want that. And I'm not going to get perfect with this mask. You could obviously get very, very granular and perfect. I'm not going to, because I'm not overly concerned about the tops of the mountain for the effect that I'm about to do. So hit O. It's going to bring me back. And as you can see, now I'm going to minimize that. And I'm just going to bring down the overall exposure of the sky to kind of make these mountains a little bit more dramatic, right? Maybe even, there's no shadows in the sky, so that's pointless. And maybe I'll take away some of the detail. It's a sky. Not all of that. I mean, they're clouds. Should be far less sharp. So maybe something like that. And now we have this sky that I can make a lot more blue if all I did was add in a color adjustment. And then we'll go ahead and hit sky, and let's see, we can make it more of a bright blue, or we can make it more of a stormy dark blue, maybe like that. There we go. There's some color changing and stuff like that. And I don't feel like I even need to mask this in, but if I felt the urge to mask this into the appropriate area, I can hit paste, and then I can hit invert. And now I have the blue sky only on the portion of the image that I care to have it on. And I'll show you the full before and after edit. This is before. It's a little dull, not very vibrant or anything of the sort. Not much color in the mountains either. And I'll admit I went a little over the top by adding in some red color overall. I could probably even come back to the split tone and back this off just to blend it a little bit better now that I'm looking at the picture overall. And I think that this works well. All right, guys. So there you go. Quick edits on, I guess not really quick, but there are some edits on how you can use the split tone in order to really boost the color or enhance the way that the color looks in an image. Hopefully you found this walkthrough helpful, albeit long. And if you did, please go ahead and smash that like button. If you have comments about the way that I did certain things or why I did things the way that I did, please leave it in the comment section below. I'd be more than happy to answer that. If you're new here, I'm Chris. I'm the content creator of apparently very long videos. But if you would like to see more content centered around photo editing, ON1 Photo Raw, things of that sort, consider hitting the subscribe button, if I could say that right. And, don't forget to check the bell icon so you can be notified of more videos that I post. So until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.